Hey everyone, Greta here. Today we are going to talk about how to bind your arms. Well, this is actually a request from someone and I found it actually very interesting because honestly, I have never taught how to bind. Tracing back to all the years that I have been practicing yoga, I was never taught properly like how to bind. You either bind or you don't bind. And so this question has never come across until now. And I thought, oh yeah, that's interesting. So let's find out how. So when you're binding, usually you're binding around your thigh, around your shin bone, stuff like that. So usually it's not just binding without an additional limb because binding without an additional limb usually is quite easy, right? So you just go cross the arms behind you and you just kind of, grab onto maybe your fingers, your wrists, or your forearms, whatever. So it is actually a lot more simple, a lot more doable. It's usually adding an extra limb. Usually it's the thigh or the shin bone, stuff like that. That is, a little bit more complicated. So what we need to do is we need to dissect it. How exactly do we bind? Well, check out the shoulder. So before, the arm is like this, right? So the shoulder is relatively flat. When we bind, we actually have to internal rotate the shoulder so that, as you can see, once I roll my shoulder forward, the elbow wing out. And that is how you bind. So you cannot bind like that. You cannot bind with a shoulder externally rotating or not internal rotating, like in a neutral shape or neutral position. So it has to do an internal rotation. So when you're doing this without an additional limb, then it's fine. You just go like that, right? Both sides are okay. But when you have to add an extra limb, let's say extended side angle, Parsvakonasana, usually that's the most popular one. It also involves additional element. The hips, the hip flexor, whether you can go, a side bend, all those stuff. Like, is your pose tight enough for your shoulder to go forward like that? A lot of times when you do this, if the shoulder, if you cannot go deep enough, then it blocks everything, and it's really, really hard to bind because there's no room to internally rotate the shoulder. So once you're here, you need to be able to roll the shoulder forward, wing the elbow out, and bind. So again, doing it like this, rolling the shoulder forward, bend the elbow, and connect and open. And of course, if you add more and more layers to it, like the shape that I just did was more like a preparation pose where the back knee was on the floor. If your back leg is also, elevated, then you need to feel the hip flexor working a little bit more so that you can go deep and bind. And also maybe, shapes like Marchasana A, where you have to bind the entire leg, then the leg needs to come really close to the body so that you have space to lean forward and internally rotate the shoulder so that you can bind. So that's it. The technique alone is not difficult at all. You can always bind very easily, but it's just adding the extra layer that makes everything more confusing. So if you're unsure how to do it, if you're unfamiliar with it, just keep binding like so, behind your back and just see, make this movement really, really comfortable and then start to add things onto it. And also the arm length has a role as well. If you add, an extra element to it, then is the length of the arms long enough for you to bind? If you cannot physically bind, that's perfectly fine. It doesn't mean that, it's the end of the world for you. You can always bind with a prop, maybe with a towel, with a strap, or maybe even with a t-shirt, anything that helps you to bind. And that's it. Hope it's helpful to you. If you have any comments, any questions on how to do stuff about yoga, drop me a note underneath and I will get back to you, or maybe I'll make a video of it as soon as I can. So like, comment, and share. Take it easy.